interesting discussion. Oh, thanks. Yes, the webinar is recorded because a lot of you cannot join. So we always record. But I think, Millie, let's get started. Let's dive right in.
I think that sounds great.
Hi, Valerie.
And hello from Mexico. Wow. Love seeing where everyone's from, and hello again. If you just joined, and I'm sure we'll have people joining as we get this started, but my name's Millie. I am head of content marketing at Hello Biome, and I'm so excited to be here today. I'm joining from Santa Barbara, California, and happy to introduce our wonderful panelists and host. So if you guys want to introduce yourself, and welcome to our third episode.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Yeah, thanks, Millie. This is so I'm Dr. Elsa Jungman, the founder and CEO of Hello Biome, and also of the consumer brand Dr. Elsa Jungman that you may have seen as we launched a microbiome-friendly skincare line and a skin microbiome test kit. But we are now fully focused on Hello Biome, and I'll explain more about what it is. So my background, I have a PhD on the skin barrier function and skin delivery. And I worked in major corporation in France before moving to the US and started working on the microbiome field. I realized there are so many innovation needed regarding microbiome when it comes to personal care and beauty product, particularly as everything that we've been developing until recently did not take into account the microbiome layer, I would say, as part of our skin barrier. And I think this is one of the reasons why I believe products are maybe too harmful for the skin and scalp. And I'm sure that the microbiome is going to bring a lot of answer, innovation, and also better personalization. And happy to share my insight. Indeed, Millie, this is the third webinar we are organizing. The first one was on microbiome product formulation. And the second one was on claims, a very interesting one with the legal counsel, Avril Love. If you don't have the recording, we're happy to share them. We'll put them in the follow-up email. And this new session is more, we didn't want to do one on the skin microbiome. We feel, there are so many resources and conferences now about that topic, but scalp is way more niche, it feels like, and there are like so much research needed to really understand the scalp microbiome. So, and I have with me today Tien Nguyen and Mariana Swanet, who are two microbiome scientists. So I'll let you introduce yourself.
Sure, I can start. My name is Tien Nguyen, and a little bit of my background is that I am a researcher at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and my work focused on studying the metabolomics within the human skin microbiome. And here at Hello Biome, I am a microbiome research scientist, and I have been with the company for over a year now. And most of what I do is designing study protocols and implementing our processes on data validation, and also taking part in the microbiome data analysis. So yeah, I'm so happy to be here and speak to you about the scalp microbiome today. So yeah, I hope you guys look forward to that.
Thanks, Dee.
And hi, everyone. My name is Mary Hannah Swanee. I'm also a researcher at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and I have a background in the skin microbiome and how the microbes are producing beneficial molecules to support skin health. And at Hello Biome, I'm a microbiome research scientist, and I do a lot of the microbiome data analysis and bioinformatics, looking at microbiome samples across different body sites. I'm also very excited to be here and share with you a bit about research happening in the scalp microbiome field.
Awesome. All right, let's get started. Thank you, Mariana. Okay, let me see. So Hello Biome, we are a company initially based in the United States, but as you can see, we're actually distributed globally. Our head of microbiome research, Dr. Grace Park, is in Seoul in South Korea, and we are spread between US, Canada, and also Europe and Ukraine, and thinking about our Ukrainian team today. And so Hello Biome is a microbiome platform for claims and innovation. We started it because as a consumer brand, we realized that to access microbiome data for claim, innovation, personalization, it was extremely challenging to do so. The only way we could access it was like working with CRO in clinical center or working with university. Both were like very costly, I would say, for a small business like us when we when we got started, and also it was not a scalable model. So that's why we built a microbiome kit for data collection with all the backend and tech to support at scale data analysis and also personalization. And we are now going beyond facial skin because we are doing a lot of our research on the scalp per this webinar, but also on intimate care and different body areas. We are a B2B company and we partner with like several large corporations that we are keeping confidential, and also with many indie brands, mostly from the US, from like scalp to skin to body. It's very exciting to see how the entire industry is really trying to do the shift toward more microbiome focused solutions. So why is the microbiome so important? Just a very quick reminder is that I think for us, the observation is to realize that we are more made of microbiome cell than we are made of actually human cell. And per definition, it means that everything that interacts with our body interact primarily with our own microbiome. And what's very interesting is that when we talk microbiome, and if you're a product developer, for example, and that you're formulating, looking at new solution or testing, product, it's very important when you think microbiome is to think that your body surface has a unique collection of microorganisms, but those collection and profile are really going to vary depending on what you're looking at. It's going to be different if you're looking at scalp, facial skin, I don't know, your feet, your intimate areas, and of course, like inner microbiome, like gut and oral. And so that means that when we do claim or when we talk about microbiome balance, it's extremely important to understand which area you're looking at, because something that seems balanced for the face may not be balanced, for example, for your back. And when you look at that graphic, you see the different color. It shows that depending on the body area you're studying, it's going to be different type of species who are going to be there as a baseline for like a balanced microbiome. And not just for bacteria, but also for fungi. When we talk microbiome, it's important to understand that it's not just about bacteria, but we have to take into account the fungi, the mites, the virus, like our whole collection of microorganisms that can have an impact. When we study a scalp and facial skin, I mean, we'll show you bacteria, of course, are very important, but we see that fungi as well have a very important role. And I believe, T, you also did a lot of, you published recently a review on the importance of fungi on the skin microbiome. And I mean, being part of the industry, I believe we all have a very, very important role to play when we bring product to market, because in our everyday life, whether we are like washing, using deodorant, doing laundry, cleaning our kids, all of that is going to impact everyone's microbiome. And when it means impact, it means it can also alter it. So it's extremely important to understand what is the impact of a solution I'm bringing to market on the microbiome. We know there is still an explosion of like sensitive skin issue. It continues to increase. So it shows that something is a bit disrupted in the way we develop product. And it seems that from the data that the microbiome has a big part to play, as most of the product we bring to market don't necessarily have data or show that they can, respect the microbiome. So it's extremely important to understand, if I'm bringing something to market, which part of the body I'm interacting with, how that could like alter or benefit the microbiome, and what information do I have, to show that to my, consumer, and also for, for the company to make sure that what we are bringing to market is safe and is going to promote health and not the opposite. So I think we're at a time where like things are shifting. Access to microbiome data is now, I would say, easier than ever. And it's really time to kind of, trying to understand what are we doing and what's going to be the long-term impact of what we develop. And what's very interesting is that the human microbiome market is exploding. The growth is at over 30%. It's what they project for up to 2029, and it's worldwide. It's across all geographies. So consumers are hearing now about the microbiome, and they want to understand what is going to be the impact of those products on their own microbiome, and have a lifestyle that is maybe more holistic and more simplistic in order to make sure they live in harmony with their own microorganism. It's also, I would say, a unique opportunity for innovation and claim, because some data are showing that almost 50% of people are interested in using products that will protect their skin microbiome. And microbiome friendly claim that we saw a lot, for example, with My Microbiome, the in vitro solution, we see that there is a demand for like ingredient and claim that is growing over 40%. And when we look at scalp, it's very interesting. I'll show you some example because it seems to be a category where the scalp is really playing an important role on that, on the microbiome friendly aspect of what we bring to market. And if we look at, scalp and the hair microbiome market, what's very interesting is to see that globally, the hair care market is growing at almost, 6% year over year. And it's a pretty substantial market. And very recently, like in the past months, we've seen major players really taking action into the scalp microbiome area. Maybe you've seen the press release we did with K18, who's like a champion, like the fastest growing hair care company today, who's not targeting scalp. Their products are targeting hair repair, but like many other players, we see the opportunity there is with the scalp microbiome. So this is, we are seeing more and more importance. We also saw Nutrafol, for example, launching a full line of microbiome friendly product and a solution with prebiotic and more investment also in the space. So I believe we are just at the beginning, and it seems like that company who have like R&D, who have like a budget for innovation. I would say even small indie brand, we're talking with a lot of scalp and hair indie brand who are starting with little budget. They are really putting the microbiome at the forefront of what they do. And everybody is understanding that microbiome is going to play a huge role when it comes to scalp health. And scalp health solution, I would say, are still pretty rare on market, but it's growing. And skin is quite saturated. There are already so many things launched. So I believe that all the players who are going to scalp today know that it's better to start, when you start something, to start it with the microbiome instead of ignoring it. And it's a very interesting observation we are making at Hello Biome. Because today we understand quite well what the skin microbiome balance is for our facial skin. We understand that it's mostly composed in a balance, and I would say a younger type of skin of like a high predominance of Cutibacterium over 70%. And when the skin is disrupted, especially when the barrier function is disrupted, like in rosacea or like atopic dermatitis, we see a decrease of Cutibacterium acnes. It's present, according to literature, seems to be correlated to the high presence of sebaceous gland and sebum on our facial skin. And when we dig into the scalp, it's a very interesting observation because observations we've made for face are actually quite similar to what we are making for scalp with a few differences. But what we understand, I would say, of a balanced skin today and how it changed when the skin is impaired, we are still very early in the scalp part. It's very hard to find, data today in the literature that can really map out scalp health. I believe it's going to come more and more over the year, but it's really the beginning, and it's going to be very interesting to see what microbiome research is going to contribute to scalp health innovation. Just a quick reminder about scalp histology. What's very interesting is that our scalp skin histology, I would say, is very similar to the facial one, with a very high density of sebaceous gland and sweat gland. But what makes a big difference is the density of hair follicle. Of course, the pH is quite similar to skin, quite acidic, around 4.5 to 5.5. But I would say what makes it very unique is that environment with hair, but that it's also the prolongation of our facial skin. And something that we don't talk about it much is that we know that our skin, that is the body's largest organ, has a size of about, let's say, 2 square meters. But actually, when we talk about skin, the skin goes deep into all the follicles as well of your hair follicle. And if you look, if you were like, I don't know how we say in English, but if you were to look at all the skin within your follicle, it's not 2 square meters, but the literature is saying around 30 square meters. It's huge. So it's very important when you study scalp also to understand the microbiome within the hair follicles, as it's going to have a huge impact on the whole scalp skin barrier function and health. And very similar to the skin, it's skin. You have the stratum corneum on the top of it. that really protect as a barrier, and the microbiome, but we'll dig into that. And then the epidermis, the dermis, and the hypodermis with the high density of follicles. So T, I'll let you dig right into the scalp.
Yeah. So on the scalp, there are 4 different regions. So the frontal, the vertex, the occipital, so with the back of your head, and the temporal, which is on the side of your head. And these 4 different regions, they varied in hair thickness and density, where the vertex area has the highest hair density, whereas the temporal area has the lowest hair density. And this is interesting because in the literature, they found that in androgenetic alopecia, a genetic disorder that causes hair loss, that the temporal region is where hair loss is the most prevalent compared to the other 3 regions. So this is really interesting. And across these 4 different regions, the microbiome composition it's very similar within individuals. However, when you look at interpersonal variability, there is very high variability. So the scalp microbiome looks very different from person to person. You can go to the next one after that. And so what is the scalp microbiome? The scalp microbiome is consisted of an ecosystem of microorganisms that include bacteria, fungi, viruses, and even eukaryotes. And these microbes live on the surface of the scalp and even deeper within the hair follicles and sebaceous and sweat glands. Compared to other body sites, such as the oral, the gut microbiome, the scalp has a relatively low microbial diversity that is dominated by key species. Some examples here, such as C. acnes, Malassezia species, and Staphylococcus epidermidis. And on the human scalp and even the skin, C. acnes is able to hydrolyze triglycerides, which are these long fatty acids to free fatty acids, and that helps them to adhere to the scalp surface better and creates an overall acidic environment. On the other hand, Malassezia species do not produce their own lipids, and they may benefit from lipids that are found in the sebaceous glands as one of their main nutrient sources. And lastly, as epidermidis is ubiquitous on the human skin and the scalp, and it is well known for its beneficial roles on both the scalp and the skin. This one. And when comparing between the facial skin and the scalp, we see that the 2 sites are very, very similar in terms of their microbiome. And this similarity is observed for both the bacterial and the fungal microbiome. And this is because the scalp is an extension of the facial skin. And the similarity across these 2 different sites could be stemming from the high sebums and glands that make these 2 microenvironments very lipid rich, and therefore they harbor very similar lipophilic or lipids loving species, and also similar in terms of their relative abundances. And to note, in the current literature, we have noticed that there were a lot of variations between data sets based on the study population of the scalp microbiome. So it is very important to consider both intrinsic and extrinsic host factors, such as ethnicity, location, and lifestyles when designing protocols to study the scalp microbiome.
Yeah, that's interesting what you're saying, T, because we're seeing some data that it said that on the scalp, Puty bacteria had a dominance of only like 40%, and other data could show a dominance more at like 70% of more. In our own data on like a baseline scalp, we are closer to the high number, like something similar to Puty bacteria.
Yep.
Yeah. But yeah, as you said, like ethnicity seems to play a very important role on the scalp microbiome. It's still quite under study, as well as like scalp condition, location, as you've mentioned. So yeah, like you said, if you're designing a clinical research study or claim study on scalp, very important to kind of narrow down the target demographic that you have in order to make sure, like, because there is so much variability inter-individually, that the more specific you are in your recruitment in a way and location, the better outcome you may see in your research data.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so now that we have a better understanding of what microbes are present on the scalp, some of the next big research questions are, what are these scalp microbes doing and how are they contributing to health and disease? And so to answer these questions, we need to understand where the microbes are living on the scalp and what they're doing. And so the scalp microbiota live on the scalp surface, but they're also found deep within the skin tissue layers, such as the upper layer, the epidermis, the dermis, and even deep within the adipose tissue layer, which is the fatty layer. The microbiota also are found within the secondary structures of the scalp that include hair follicles and sweat and sebaceous glands. And within the hair follicle, a really high density of diverse microbes exist at the hair follicle opening, where there is an abundance of sweat and sebum for these microbes to use as nutrient sources. As you go deeper within the hair follicle, you also find reduced oxygen levels, and this selects for certain types of microbes such as Cutibacterium acnes that really prefer this low oxygen environment and really lipid-rich environment as well. And so these microbes are constantly interacting with the skin cells and the immune cells in this environment rather than just existing. So they are playing active roles to support health. And they're doing this through different ways, such as nutrient production, where the scalp microbiota are predicted to produce beneficial molecules such as amino acids and vitamins that are supporting scalp health. In addition, the microbiota also on the scalp active as a protective barrier. And they do this through different ways to protect against pathogens. One way is through acting as a physical barrier. So the more space that the scalp microbes are taking up, the less room there is for pathogens to come in and take over. They're also producing antimicrobial molecules to inhibit pathogens. And then lastly, as Dee had mentioned, some of these microbes are reducing the pH of the scalp to make it more acidic, which makes it a less hospitable environment for pathogens to come in. And then lastly, the microbiota are really important for immune homeostasis. So that, as I mentioned, they're constantly interacting with the immune cells and skin cells in the scalp. And this is important for promoting a healthy and active immune response. And so the scalp microbiome and its balance are really essential for scalp health. And when this balance is disrupted, this can lead to a dysbiosis and cause issues for the scalp.
Yeah, thank you, Mariana. And one point that is also that we've seen in our data that's very interesting to see is that when you describe like the homeostasis of the microbiome and the balance, is that we see on skin, because we looked at both bacteria and fungi when we do next generation sequencing with our platform. On skin, we see that we have about, I would say, 10 times more bacteria than fungi. But on the scalp, that ratio is quite different, right? We see about more, I would say 50-50, maybe a predominance of bacteria, but very close to the fungi level. So when researching the scalp microbiome, fungi seems to have an even more important role probably regarding the homeostasis of the scalp barrier function. I don't know if you want to add anything on that, but it's something very, very a very interesting observation we've made when we've been conducting studies.
Right, exactly. And even though the scalp and the skin are very similar, scalp is an extension of the skin. This just goes to show that the scalp is its own unique environment, and these immune interactions are really essential on the scalp and the skin as well.
Thank you. And when we look at the opportunity regarding scalp health, we see that traditionally, and the way research had been conducted until recently, is that there was no really consideration for the interaction of the whole scalp microbiome and its correlation to health, and the approach with like certain ingredient and product we've seen on market was really to like kill everything, you know, like all microorganism, and unfortunately, which could lead, you know, to more sensitization and scalp issue over time. And today within the industry, we see that there is really like a shift toward promoting more scalp health, which is where we are, you know, all trying to go, because there is this opportunity to rebalance and promote scalp health through microbiome focused innovation, instead of trying to just kill everything, but really being targeting specific microorganism and balance. And same like with skin, very important if you're, you know, researching particular skin condition, whether it's like hair thinning, hair loss, atopic skin, and so on. It's very important to understand what you are targeting, because I mean, Mariana will show you more in detail, but the microbiome is not going to have the same taxonomy depending on the condition or scalp profile you are studying. And there is a market for like a lot of innovation to come. Like when we look at psoriasis, for example, 80% of people who have psoriasis on their body also experience it on scalp. And it's something that is not much talked about. Like androgenetic alopecia in male, it's over 80% of Caucasian male who are going to suffer from it. And same with sensitive scalp, the number are very close to skin. Over 60% of women report some sort of scalp reaction, you know, when using product or with certain trigger, and over 40% of men as well. And probably because women tend to use more product than men, maybe, and maybe wash more frequently. I'm not sure what the cause is, but very similar to what we've seen with the facial skin. The scalp area is also extremely sensitive, prone to different type of disbalance. And understanding the impact of the microbiome on that disbalance to rebalance it is going to be key.
Right. And so as Elsa mentioned, these scalp conditions are very prevalent and afflict many people. And because of this, it's important to also take the microbiome into consideration when studying these types of different scalp disorders. So for example, seborrheic dermatitis and dandruff are an inflammation of the scalp and other sebum-rich body areas that can cause really scaly red skin and dandruff. And recent research has shown that there is a potential relationship between these conditions and the microbiome. For example, when it comes to Malassezia restricta, which is this fungal species that's present on healthy skin and scalp, there can be differences in the strain level for this species. So some strains that are beneficial and good for the scalp, and then others that may be disruptive. And it's thought that these disruptive strains may be associated with dandruff and seborrheic dermatitis. In addition, the balance or imbalance of the bacterial and fungal communities is really essential for many of these scalp conditions, including dandruff. So for example, what we're seeing in a healthy scalp, it's really dominated by Cutibacterium acnes and some staph epidermidis. But when we look at a dandruff scalp, we see that there's a shift in a bloom of the Staphylococcus epidermidis that shifts the community. And so we have two species, bacterial species, that are found on a healthy scalp, but it's really the balance that seems to be shifted in this case. When we look at scalp psoriasis, this is an immune disorder where the immune cells are attacking the skin cells, causing patches of thick, raised red skin. And studies have also shown a potential relationship here with the microbiome, where there's a higher rate of Malassezia species, a fungal colonizer, that are isolated from the psoriatic patients versus the healthy controls. In addition, within the psoriatic lesions, it's been shown that there's a higher diversity of bacteria, meaning there's more bacteria present on these lesions. And not only is the scalp microbiome disrupted, but also we see a dysbiosis of the gut and skin microbiomes as well. So really showing how you can see a sort of body-wide dysbiosis in the microbiome for certain disorders. Go to the next slide. And for androgenetic alopecia or hair loss, this is a condition where there's altered hair growth cycle and shrinking of the hair follicle that ultimately leads to hair loss. And research has also shown the relationship with the microbiome, where there is a higher abundance of Cutibacterium acnes, and also higher levels of porphyrin production by this bacteria, which are inflammatory molecules. And alongside this increase in Cutibacterium acnes, we also see a decrease in Corynebacteria, which are another type of bacteria that are also found on healthy scalp and skin. And so similarly to dandruff, we see an imbalance in the bacterial community, an increase in one species, a decrease in the other. So really showing how it's important to take the entire microbiome into consideration rather than just single species. For sensitive scalp, this is a condition where there's an abnormal and unpleasant sensations on the scalp in response to certain stimuli, which should not normally elicit these types of responses. And here, in the case of the microbiome, we see that there's increased Cutibacterium acnes that is associated with a sort of ecosystem-wide shift in the scalp, including an altered pH, higher porphyrin production, which is that inflammatory molecule, and then also disrupted sebum levels. So here it's an ecosystem-wide shift in dysbiosis that seems to have a relationship with the microbiome. And so overall, the connection between the scalp microbiome and these different scalp disorders is really complex. And it's really important to consider the entire ecosystem, including the microbiome plus the scalp environment. And so this research has shown us that and taught us a lot about the scalp microbiome, but there's really so much more left to learn. And this opens up the opportunity for us to continue doing research and to try and find ways to rebalance and promote a healthy scalp microbiome through targeted interventions and innovations focused on the microbiome.
Thank you. And by the way, if you have any question, feel free to start writing them in the chat, and we will be moderating them at the end of the talk. Well, there is one question. I think we can take that one. I think it's the chicken and the egg question, but it's a very good question. Does the disorder cause the microbiome disbalance or the other way around?
Yeah, that's a really great question, and I think that's what everybody wants to know. So it is really hard to say whether the microbiome imbalance causes the disorder, or if the disorder and changes in the skin and the scalp result in a disrupted microbiome. I think it's really hard to say, but I think research is heading in that direction, and we will maybe be able to give more insights in a few years into this. I don't know if anybody else has any more to add.
I mean, it's what the science is saying today. I think what's interesting is also to know that the microbiome is really like, I would say, representing the state of your skin immunity in a way. So until, you know, your skin is still like an inflamed or like this balanced state, it's still going to show into your microbiome and vice versa. But yeah, it's always the chicken and the egg question about what is caused first, but it's like this cycle that connect the both together. Okay, I'll continue, and then I see we have some question about dandruff shampoo. We'll go right into here, because now it's about understanding better about all those conditions. What are the solutions to actually rebalance them? And disclaimer, there are not many on market today. I was still doing some research yesterday to prepare the webinar, and I was surprised because we are very used to work, you know, on a facial skin, and I would say facial skin is saturated now of a microbiome claim, even microbiome data, which is great to see, and different type of like active. On the scalp of product that have hit market as a finished product, it's still way more niche, and I'll show you what we've been seeing recently. But if you're trying to develop innovation and product regarding scalp health, something that we always recommend to do when it comes to skin, and it goes for scalp, is also to think about first, the less is more. Because as Mariana was showing, there is still an increase of skin sensitization when it comes to scalp. And a part of the reason why the skin area can become sensitive or allergic over time is because we tend to formulate product with way too many inkeys, way too many ingredients. So really try to keep it minimal. The sweet spot I like is to have a product with like 15 or less ingredients. 10 or less is even better. I know for like scalp and hair product that is difficult, but it's something that will be, I think, achievable. So instead of focusing just on a hero ingredient, especially if you're doing, a development and you found, that new prebiotic that can help dandruff, instead of just thinking, let's do that, yes, let's use it for marketing and let's, just create a formulation that will carry that new active, really think about all the product that will be in there. Because today, when we look at personal care marketing, it's all about promoting a hero ingredient and an active. And the issue with that is that for the consumer and also for us in the industry is that we tend to be only focused about the efficiency of that solo ingredient or that blend. And we do not focus about all the other ingredients that will be on the formulation that can alter and have an impact on the microbiome as much as your active ingredients. When you see people who have like skin reaction, it can be done, to like that tiny percentage of fragrance that you added or preservative. It's not always because of an active. So that's why it's very important to understand everything that's in your product and not just the hero ingredients. So ideally, what we want to see when we develop product and market, like, yeah, it's good to talk about your active, but really try also to understand what are all the other ingredients going to do to your scalp health. And it's not just about being clean and sustainable. It's really about understanding what is going to be the biological interaction with the microbiome and with the scalp health function of the finished product over time. And some quick, information about how you can also formulate to be more microbiome friendly is like thinking about anhydrous solution. So meaning that if you manage to really significantly decrease your water activity, you don't need as much preservation system or maybe no preservation system at all. It's not easy, but we see more and more when it comes to hair care, solid and powder formulation that are waterless. It can also be oil-based formulation if you're like doing a serum, and really try to skip water when possible. And there are ways to incorporate hydrophilic actives or ingredients in a lipophilic solution or a dry one. There are different types of encapsulation system that you can use, or little trick. I'm happy to talk about that separately. If you work on water-based product, often the water take up to 80% of your product, and it requires preservative. We have a whole webinar about alternative preservation system to make the product more gentle and gentle to the microbiome. Happy to share the recording on that if you're interested. I won't dig into that, but of course, don't skip your preservation system, but try to think of alternatives and way to trick your water activity by adding certain ingredients like glycerin that can help, to decrease then the preservative concentration you will need. And of course, try to skip ingredients that can be more sensitizing and allergen, like fragrance, harsh emulsifier, like sulfate, and also essential oils when possible, depending on your positioning. And then after thinking about that, it's like there are different types of actives when it comes to formulating for the microbiome. It's very interesting because normally when I do that presentation for skin that is not scalp, I always show an example of brown for each one of those. And trust me, when it came to a scalp product, it was extremely difficult to find. I found, for example, a shampoo claimed to have a probiotic, and the probiotic was an acid. So I'm like, okay, it seems like there is still a lot of education to do. Or I found a few big brands who mentioned having a prebiotic in their ingredient list, but they did not disclose what was the prebiotic in their formulation. So it's very interesting to see the difference between facial skin and scalp. But to remember, if you want to use prebiotic are basically food for your beneficial microbes. And there are different types of prebiotic that you can find, like rice ferment, different type of sugar, like alpha-glucan oligosaccharide, that's an example. But when you use prebiotic, really challenge your ingredient provider about the data that they have to make sure that it's really only targeting the type of species you want to grow and that it won't grow all the unwanted microorganisms, and try to collect also your own data on that to make sure that in the end, the prebiotic is going to be beneficial. Probiotic, I mean, I'll say it again, but it has to be, according to the FDA, a live macroorganism. if you're using like a lysate, a ferment, it's a different category. And if you don't want to get a lawsuit, do not call your product having a probiotic if that's not the case, especially if you're a fast growing company or you want to do an exit soon. Be very careful with that. We've seen, unfortunately, a lot of class action happening because of that. So very important. There are some companies that do have a live probiotic. Moverdot, I don't think they're on the market anymore regarding their consumer product. There are other companies in Europe who do have live probiotic, but like Skinome for face. But be very careful. If you have a probiotic, it requires a lot of product development. Very often it requires also a cold chain. So you have to really think, because if you put a probiotic and your product contains a lot of preservative, consumers are going to come after you and you're going to lose your credibility in a way. So be very careful about what you're doing and claiming to really protect your business and your legacy, I would say. Postbiotic are a very interesting category. I would say it's a very broad category. It's any product produced by live microorganism. So it's also what we call, ferments, and it can be, peptide, lipid. It's a very interesting category, especially with the explosion of biotech when it comes to developing new ingredients. More and more companies and the ingredient provider have invested into biotechnology in order to create their actives from a live microorganism. I think it's going to be the future of beauty. We've also seen it recently with companies like Geltor, Archaea, and I think it's not going away. So it's really a category to watch, and it helps you to have a postbiotic in your formulation that often, if you choose them well, your active can be very beneficial for the skin. There is the category of bacteriophage that are basically a bacterial virus. We see them in a few companies for the face, targeting acne product. I haven't found any phage product for the scalp. If you know of any, I'll be curious to learn about it. It's still very niche, but I think it's growing because you can easily tailor specific bacteriophage to kill a specific bacterial or fungal strain. So little do and don't quickly. So don't combine, probiotic and prebiotic just to call them symbiotic that are a combination of both. Really be very careful about what is going to be the synergic effect of your product. And if you have probiotic, but the bacteria is not alive, don't call it probiotic, but maybe use alternative vocabulary like parabiotic, for example. We've seen it in some company. I think I would be careful, and consumer will appreciate that. And it's not because you don't have a live bacteria that you don't necessarily have a positive effect of your product. But remember, it's not just about the active you put in your product. It's about the full formulation and what is this full formulation going to have as an impact. And when I was looking at a recent launch on the microbiome side, what I found very interesting regarding scalp is that actually most of the recent scalp launch targeting the microbiome are a lot about being gentle and friendly. So more like, I would say, some sort of like sensitive skin friendly product with the microbiome. And these three, like a hyper growth company like Nutrafol, Pros, K18, all got a microbiome friendly certification for some of their products that come in contact with scalp. And I think it's very interesting that the hair care industry is taking also that shift toward a microbiome friendly approach. Because I think we don't see it on my microbiome website, but it's very difficult apparently to develop microbiome friendly hair care product because probably of the high amount of surfactant and fragrances, for example. So if you manage to do so, being able to collect some information and data about your actual impact of your product on the microbiome is going to be very interesting. I could not find recent innovation with a final product launched on the market. Maybe I've missed something, but when you search for like skin product, there are tons of it. When you search scalp and microbiome, it's extremely limited, or the brand are not necessarily explaining what is a prebiotic, or the probiotic is actually not a probiotic. So I didn't want to show anything misleading or that would lack information. But what I found extremely interesting in the few companies I found when I went to their website page is that the approach they take is really around the microbiome gentle approach and about thinking about the whole formulation and not just the active, which I found looked very promising. If we look, for example, at Galinée and their crème lavande that I believe she launched it in a couple of years ago, Marie Drago. She's doing claim around support the microbiome, soothing, sensitive skin, pH friendly. So really trying to, and she's not also calling it a shampoo, but a cream, which is an interesting marketing approach, and also targeting the sulfite free. So very interesting to see that it's about bringing to market much more gentle product. They are doing claim around anti-dandruff. I haven't seen microbiome data on that claim. It was more self-reported claim, but a very interesting approach when it comes to a marketing scalp microbiome product. I discovered this brand, 107. It seems to be a K-beauty brand. Maybe apology if I'm wrong, but what was very interesting, like Galinée, about this company is that they have this, they call it the microbiome shampoo, and a lot of their claim, well, they have a probiotic claim, but what was interesting is that they actually use a different type of ingredient with also a vinegar that they're really promoting to support a scalp balance, and also taking that approach being like more gentle with like fragrance free for like synthetic fragrance, sustainability source like vinegar, really trying to show like the formulation as a whole and not just about the microbiome. Yeah. And then if you're looking at particular active for your formulation, if you're like targeting dandruff and over, there are many, many launch from ingredient supplier. I just took like 3 of them that I found, but there are many more. It's like, it's not a list, but just to show you like BASF, the giant of like an ingredient manufacturer, has launched like a scalpozine, for example, that they call like a detox ritual for healthy scalp. And a lot of their claim are about like assisting in rebalancing the microbiome. So not very precise data, but interesting to see that they are also taking that approach when it comes to scalp. Givaudan has launched Patchouleup that is all about regulating sebum production, and they claim also that it normalizes scalp microbiota. And Novachem Lactobio has launched a prebiotic that is supposed to stimulate a microorganism like Staph epidermidis and Micrococcus roseus. So also very interesting. There are more and more active like that available on the market, but my advice would be choose those active if you're interested, but really test your final formulation to understand the final impact on the formula. And if we think about bringing a product to market, it's really like we explained, identify your target, the condition, the demographic you're looking at, develop for them. You can do some in vitro screening of your formula to know if the formula seems to be beneficial or not for the microbiome. But then it's very important for claim substantiation and data collection to actually have in vivo data and do in vivo testing for the data collection to kind of create a loop to understand when people use your product, what is going to be the impact, especially if they see positive clinical outcome. Is that going to be correlated to the microbiome balance to really see how your product is actually rebalancing the microbiome? And that's something we support at Hello Biome by being a microbiome data. We are here to really unlock the potential of a microbiome data collection. What we do is that we have a platform with a next generation sequencing, and we built all the tech to be able to look at the insight and scale up data collection. The turnaround to get data is less than 2 weeks. It's extremely fast. And we also built a clustering consortium algorithm in order to support also personalization. And we started with skin, but now we developed a microbiome test kit that can actually analyze all the different body area. And a large part of our work is actually really focused on collecting scalp microbiome data in vivo at home. And we use next generation sequencing. I believe it's very important. It's a good alternative, I would say, to shotgun because it's more affordable. And we are looking at both bacteria and fungi quantitatively at the species level with an extremely fast turnaround. So like that, you're able to understand the full taxonomy for bacteria and fungal species before deciding whether you want to do shotgun or not of your same sample. But starting with NGS is a very fast and affordable way to collect data and be also able to substantiate claims. When it comes to measuring the scalp microbiome, I know we had questions about the method. A lot of it is confidential, but I'm happy to discuss it separately on a call or an email. We have developed some non-invasive way with a simple swab to collect the scalp microbiome from different areas. The data are extremely interesting and I would say accurate when you do a relevant clinical design, which we are here to support. So happy to discuss it more, to explain about our protocols of what we do. But the different type of service that we offer is that we do like white label of microbiome test kit for like face, scalp, body, where we can customize our whole tech platform for like user experience and reporting. And we do research innovation studies. So if you're, let's say, studying dandruff in male who are like 40 years old, we can support you to do that data collection and to get the insight that you need for your future product development and also IP filing. A big part of what we do are also claim study, where we are doing claim substantiation. We are giving you the data so you can make before and after claim about your product. And we take care of everything from like volunteer recruiting, enrollment, to providing you the report and doing the data collection. And we are coming up with a seal early next month. We are very careful with what we claim on our seal. We don't want you to get a lawsuit because of the seal we use. So it's in our claim 101 webinar that I can share, but it's to be able to do claim around clinically tested for the skin microbiome. And an advice is that it's better to always be extremely precise about what you're rebalancing and promoting and not making very broad claim, and having data to substantiate it is the best way to protect you and be confident with the marketing you'll do. What's very special in the way that we do the clinical design is that we take care of the participant recruiting, and people know us through either the consumer brand. We have a large database of users and we continue to recruit more people every day, but consumers who participate in the study, they also get their own microbiome report at the end. So it's a huge incentive for them, and they become, I would say, microbiome advocate on their own when they've been a volunteer in a study. And this really helps at the same time you're doing the study to spread the word about microbiome, but also it comes into the reward for the compensation. A part of it is actually to get access to their microbiome report, which is a huge incentive. This is a quick example of how we show our before and after data. We look at China diversity, the different community, the full taxonomy, and we've developed and validated internally what we call a microbiome score. It's like a grade of your microbiome balance with the ratio of bacteria and fungi detected. The calculation is proprietary, but I'm happy also to give you more information about that. And it can help you when you do a before and after study to quickly see how your product impacted the microbiome with the change of the average microbiome score. We also do formulation development in our lab in San Francisco to support formulation product development for microbiome friendly. Happy to tell you more about it. And this is the rest of the team who's not here today. Dr. Grace Park, who's on maternity leave, our head of microbiome in Seoul, and Nikita Lukianev, our CTO, who built all the backend and data analyzing processing. And our COO, Elisa, is today and tomorrow in Rotterdam at the microbiome conference. If you're there or someone from your team is going, feel free to go and say hi. So we are a female-led team, as you can see, very global and experienced. So if you'd like to learn more about our service, if scalp health and microbiome is of important for you, I will be happy to assist you to see how we could support you. And I'll take a few questions for Vienne. I see we have many open questions. Let me take a quick look. Oh, an interesting question, maybe for you or for Mariana Orti. How do you define as normal